a country slowly tilting like a seesaw, while half of it silently sinks into the sea. A border town that's legally at war with Russia and has been for over 150 years. A beach that can predict exactly where you are just by the size of its pebbles. Today, we're exploring 40 mind-blowing facts about the United Kingdom that will change how you see this tiny island forever. Fact 1. No point is ever far from the sea. Here's something that sounds impossible for a country this size. No matter where you stand in the entire United Kingdom, a factory, a field, a mountain ridge, you are never more than 70 miles from the ocean. That's the geography of an island so indented by bays and inlets that the sea never truly lets go. Fact 2. The coastline that changes length depending on who measures it. The UK's official coastline is listed at roughly 7,700 miles. But measure it differently, tracing every inlet, cove, and tidal creek, and the Ordnance Survey gets 31,000 miles. Same island, 4 times the length. That's the coastline paradox. The more precisely you measure, the longer it gets. It's a real mathematical phenomenon called the fractal coastline problem. Fact 3. Scotland has more islands than you'll ever visit. Scotland alone has 790 islands off its coast. Only around 130 are permanently inhabited. The rest? Cliffs, seabirds, ancient ruins, and silence. Some have populations of fewer than 10 people, entire islands governed by a handful of neighbors. Fact 4. The accent that changes every 25 miles. Drive across Britain in any direction. Within 25 miles, the accent around you will have noticeably shifted. It's not just about north versus south. It's valleys, ports, mining towns, market cities, each carving out its own sound. Linguists call it one of the most accent-dense regions on Earth. The geography shaped the sound. Fact 5. A lake so big, it swallowed the rankings. Most people would guess Loch Ness or Loch Lomond as the UK's biggest lake. They'd be wrong. Loch Ness in Northern Ireland is so vast, it dwarfs every other lake in Britain. It covers 388 square kilometers, nearly 3 times larger than the next biggest. It is, in fact, the largest freshwater lake in all of the British Isles. Most people have never heard of it. Fact 6. The river that belongs to 2 countries. The longest river in the UK doesn't belong to England. The River Severn begins in the mountains of Wales, crosses into England, winds through ancient cities, and finally empties into the Bristol Channel. At 220 miles long, it crosses a national border just to exist. And it carries the second largest tidal range on Earth. Fact 7. The beach that knows where you are. Chesil Beach in Dorset is 18 miles long and made entirely of pebbles. But here's the thing. The pebbles are graded. Near the eastern end, they're the size of a fist. Near the western end, they're tiny as a fingertip. Before GPS existed, local fishermen could tell exactly where they were just by grabbing a handful of stones. The beach was its own navigation system. Fact 8. The city built on a river that changed course. London sits on the River Thames today. But the Thames wasn't always there. Before the most severe Ice Age glaciation, roughly 450,000 years ago, the river ran on a completely different path through what is now Essex. The ice physically pushed the river onto its current course. London exists where it does because a glacier redirected a river 500,000 years ago. Fact 9. The Underground Royal Mail Train. Under the streets of London, there's a railway almost nobody has ever ridden. Built in 1927, the mail rail ran 6.5 miles beneath the city, from Paddington to Whitechapel, carrying letters and parcels, not people. It operated 22 hours a day for decades. The trains had no drivers. It was one of the first fully automated railways on Earth. Fact 10. Britain is an island, but it almost wasn't. Around 450,000 years ago, Britain was physically connected to Europe. You could walk from what is now London to what is now Paris. It wasn't sea that separated them, it was a massive land bridge. Then, a catastrophic glacial lake outburst carved through the rock at Dover, and the English Channel was born. Britain became an island not by drift, but by flood. But that was just the beginning. Fact 11. The highest mountain that isn't very high. Ben Nevis in Scotland is the tallest peak in the entire United Kingdom. It stands at 4,413 feet. By comparison, that's lower than the base camp of Mount Everest. Yet its weather is so violent, with hurricane-force winds and blizzards in summer, that people die on it every year. It's not the height that kills, it's the island's brutal, unpredictable air. Fact 12. The deepest lake that nobody talks about. Loch Morar in the Scottish Highlands is the deepest lake in the British Isles. It plunges 1,017 feet, deeper than the entire North Sea above it. The North Sea's average depth is only about 300 feet. A Scottish loch is deeper than the open ocean beside it. And like its famous neighbor, Loch Morar has its own rumored monster, Morag. Fact 13. The Severn Bore, a wave that travels upstream. What if I told you there's a wave in England that flows the wrong direction? The Severn Bore is a tidal surge that races 25 miles upstream along the River Severn. It can reach heights of 9 feet and speeds of 13 miles per hour. Surfers travel from across the world to ride it. A wave on a river going the wrong way. Fact 14. The town with the longest place name in Europe. In Wales, there is a town whose name is 58 letters long. Translated, it means St. Mary's Church in the hollow of the White Hazel near a rapid whirlpool, near St. Tysilio's Church and the Red Cave. Locals call it Llanfairpwll. The full name was extended in the 1860s as a publicity stunt to attract railway tourists. It worked. Fact 15. The EEZ that makes the UK a quiet giant. On a map, the United Kingdom looks modest, a small island off Europe's shoulder. But include its overseas territories and crown dependencies and the UK's exclusive economic zone, the sea it controls for fishing and resources, stretches to over 6.8 million square kilometers. That makes it the 5th largest maritime zone on Earth. The UK controls more ocean than almost any nation alive. Fact 16. The country sinking while its neighbor rises. Right now, as you read this, southern England is slowly sinking, and northern Scotland is slowly rising. It's called isostatic rebound. During the last ice age, Scotland was buried under 1,000 feet of ice. The weight crushed the crust downward. The south bulged upward to compensate. Now that the ice is gone, the north is bouncing back, like releasing pressure on one end of a mattress. The south is now paying the price. London is tilting toward the sea. Fact 17. The rocks older than life itself. In the remote northwest of Scotland, you can touch rock that is 2.7 billion years old. The Louisian gneiss is some of the oldest exposed rock on Earth's surface. When these rocks formed, there was no life on land, no animals, no plants, just ancient pressure and heat, solidifying in an unrecognizable world. You can stand on it today with your bare hands. Fact 18. A sunken continent beneath the North Sea. Before Britain was an island, before the English Channel existed, a vast land called Doggerland stretched beneath what is now the North Sea. It was inhabited by Mesolithic humans, rich with rivers, forests, and wildlife. Around 8,000 years ago, a massive tsunami from a Norwegian submarine landslide swallowed it in days. Fishermen still dredge up mammoth bones, ancient tools, and human remains from the seabed. An entire civilization drowned. Fact 19. A wreck filled with live explosives sitting off London. In 1944, an American cargo ship called the SS Richard Montgomery ran aground in the Thames estuary, just 1 mile from the English shore. It still sits there today, still loaded with 1,400 tons of unexploded munitions. Its masts poke above the water at low tide. Authorities prohibit boats from going within 1,600 feet of it. If it ever detonates, the explosion could trigger a wave large enough to flood nearby towns. It's been sitting there for over 80 years. Fact 20. Major shock moment. The UK is not one country. Here is the most fundamental geographic deception on any map. The United Kingdom is not a country. Not really. It is 4 distinct nations: England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, each with its own capital, its own legal system, its own national identity. Scotland has its own courts. Wales has its own parliament and its own ancient language. Northern Ireland is on a different island. The entire entity shares one monarch, one military, one UN seat, but the geography beneath it has never truly unified. It is 4 nations wearing one coat. Everything you thought you knew, about to get stranger. Fact 21. The sandbank that killed 1,000 people in one night. 6 miles off the Kent coast lies the Goodwin Sands. At high tide, it's invisible, a hidden barrier lurking just beneath the surface. Over the centuries, it has destroyed more than 1,000 ships. In one single storm in November 1703, over 1,000 people drowned on that one sandbank in a single night. It still sits there today, unlit, unmarked on the surface, waiting. Fact 22. The town technically at war with Russia. Berwick-upon-Tweed is a small town on the English-Scottish border. For centuries, it was so disputed that it was listed separately from both England and Scotland in royal proclamations. When Britain declared war on Russia during the Crimean War, the proclamation included England, Scotland, Ireland, and Berwick-upon-Tweed. When the peace treaty was signed, Berwick was forgotten. The town was, technically, never formally included in the peace. For decades, the story circulated that Berwick was still at war with Russia, and in 1966, a Soviet official visited and symbolically declared peace. The mayor joked, "Tell the Russian people they can sleep soundly in their beds." Fact 23. The fossil coast revealing creatures that predate humans. Along the cliffs of Dorset and East Devon, a 95-mile stretch called the Jurassic Coast, erosion is constantly exposing fossils from 185 million years ago. Ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs, ancient sharks. After every storm, amateur fossil hunters find new species on the beach. In 2024, a new species of ancient fish was identified from bones discovered by a schoolgirl. The coast is a living laboratory, still being read. Fact 23. The fossil coast revealing creatures that predate humans. Along the cliffs of Dorset and East Devon, a 95-mile stretch called the Jurassic Coast, erosion is constantly exposing fossils from 185 million years ago. Ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs, ancient sharks. After every storm, amateur fossil hunters find new species on the beach. In 2024, a new species of ancient fish was identified from bones discovered by a schoolgirl. The coast is a living laboratory, still being read. Fact 24. The Welsh language that survived extinction. Welsh is one of the oldest living languages in Europe, and one of the few Celtic languages spoken on the mainland. At its lowest point in the 20th century, it was nearly gone. Today, over 500,000 people speak it daily. In Wales, road signs are bilingual. Government operates in both languages. Geography preserved it. The mountains of Wales created isolation enough to shelter a language that should, by all logic, have died. Fact 25. The island with more puffins than people. Rathlin Island, off the northern coast of Northern Ireland, is home to about 140 people and tens of thousands of puffins. It also shelters a subspecies found nowhere else on Earth, the golden hare, a variant of the Irish hare with golden fur and distinctive blue eyes. It exists only on that one island. Lose Rathlin, and you lose the golden hare forever. Fact 26. The ancient forest swallowed by the sea. At low tide on the beaches of Wales and eastern England, the blackened stumps of an ancient forest sometimes emerge from the sand. These trees drowned between 4,000 and 6,000 years ago, as rising seas swallowed the coastline. Some are so well preserved you can still see the wood grain. They are forests that grew when Stonehenge was being built. Now they appear only at the lowest tides, briefly, before disappearing again beneath the water. Fact 27. The Channel Tunnel is the wrong way around. The Channel Tunnel connecting Britain to France stretches 31 miles beneath the sea. But here is the part nobody talks about. The tunnel doesn't go the most direct route. It follows a specific geological band of chalk marl, a layer of rock stable enough to tunnel through. The geology dictated the path, not the engineers. The Earth decided where the tunnel would go. Fact 28. Britain was once at the equator. Around 360 million years ago, the landmass that would become United Kingdom sat at the equator, submerged under a warm, shallow tropical sea. The limestone in the Peak District and the Mendip Hills, the rock beneath English fields, was deposited as coral and shell on a tropical seabed. Britain was once the Caribbean. Fact 29. The tidal range that could power the country. The Bristol Channel has the second largest tidal range on Earth, up to 47 feet between high and low tide. The theoretical wave and tidal energy potential of the UK's entire coastline has been calculated at roughly 11 times the nation's current electricity consumption. 11 times. The island is surrounded by power it has barely started to use. Fact 30. The day Britain disconnected from Europe. Around 450,000 years ago, Britain was part of a land bridge to Europe. The River Thames flowed northeast and joined the Rhine. Mammoths, hippos, and early humans crossed freely. Then a glacier in the north dammed a massive proglacial lake over what is now the southern North Sea. When the dam broke, the outburst was catastrophic, a megaflood that carved the English Channel in what geologists believe was one of the most violent flood events in the history of the Northern Hemisphere. Dover's white cliffs were sheared. The valley was drowned. Britain became an island in a matter of weeks. Every war, every invasion, every act of defiance, the Battle of Britain, Dunkirk, the Spanish Armada, was made possible by a single geological catastrophe thousands of years before any of it. Fact 31. The equal sign was born in a Welsh town. In 1557, Welsh mathematician Robert Record invented the equal sign. He chose two parallel lines because, in his words, no two things can be more equal. He introduced it in a book called The Whetstone of Wit. Record died in a London debtor's prison the very next year. The man who gave the world the foundation of every mathematical equation died penniless, forgotten, in a Welsh town called Tenby. Fact 32. A shipwreck still carrying the power to flatten a town. We mentioned the SS Richard Montgomery earlier, but let's sit with this. The ship holds enough explosive force that some estimates say a full detonation could send a column of water and debris 300 feet into the air. The shockwave would shatter windows across the Thames estuary. Nearby Sheerness, a town of 12,000 people, sits a mile away. Every year the wreck is monitored. Every year experts debate what to do. No one has done anything. It continues to slowly corrode beneath a mile of water, 1 mile from a town. Fact 33. The knocked-out glacier that changed everything. During the Anglian glaciation, the most severe ice age Britain ever experienced, ice reached as far south as London and Bristol. It was over 1,000 meters thick in Scotland. The sheer weight of that ice didn't just flatten the landscape, it redirected rivers, carved valleys, deposited rocks from Norway on the Yorkshire coast, and when it finally melted, it left behind the fjords of Scotland, the U-shaped valleys of the Lake District, and set in motion the slow geological seesaw that is still tilting Britain today. Fact 34. Bonfire night was once legally mandatory. On the 5th of November, the UK celebrates the failed gunpowder plot. But here's what almost nobody knows. Until 1959, it was actually illegal not to celebrate Bonfire Night. Participation was mandatory by law across the country. There was exactly one exception: St. Peter's School. Guy Fawkes, the man being burned in effigy, had been a pupil there. The school was formally exempted out of respect for its famous former student. A school permanently excused from burning its own alumni in effigy. Fact 35. Over 300 languages spoken in one city. London is home to speakers of more than 300 languages, more than any other city on Earth. Romanian is now the most common language after English in the capital, followed by Spanish, Polish, Bengali, and Portuguese. This tiny island, once the center of an empire that circled the globe, pulled the world toward it, and the world stayed. The languages of 100 nations, compressed into 600 square miles. Fact 36. The tsunami that drowned an entire civilization. 8,000 years ago, an underwater landslide off the coast of Norway triggered a massive tsunami called the Storegga Slide. The wave struck the eastern coasts of Scotland and northern England. At the time, much of what is now the North Sea was still dry land, Doggerland, home to thousands of Mesolithic hunter-gatherers. The wave inundated the coast and accelerated the drowning of Doggerland. An entire chapter of human civilization in northern Europe was erased by a single wave from a collapsing underwater cliff. Fact 37. The mountain that was taller than Everest. Scotland's highlands don't look like much today. Worn, rounded, ancient. But 400 million years ago, the ancient Caledonian mountains that formed what is now Scotland and Scandinavia may have been taller than the Himalayas, the Alps of their era, the Everest of the ancient world. Time, erosion, and billions of years of wind and rain ground them down to what you see today, gentle purple slopes that hide the memory of giants. Fact 38. An entire country hidden below sea level. The fens of eastern England, a vast, flat landscape of fields and drainage channels, sit at or below sea level. The lowest point in the UK is here, at roughly 13 feet below the ocean's surface. For centuries, it was marshland, flooded every winter, inhabited by a hardy people who fished and hunted in the reeds. Then, in the 17th century, Netherlands engineers drained it using windmills and canals. It is now some of the most productive farmland in Britain. But it only exists because humans pump water out of it continuously. Stop the pumps, and within years, the sea reclaims it. Fact 39. The island that technically has no country. Rockall is a tiny granite spike in the middle of the North Atlantic, 301 miles west of Scotland. It is 82 feet tall and barely 100 feet wide. Britain claimed it in 1955 by physically landing a Royal Marine on it. It has no indigenous population, no economy, almost no wildlife. And yet 4 countries, the UK, Ireland, Denmark, and Iceland, have at various points disputed who owns it. Because whoever owns Rockall controls the fishing rights and seabed resources of an enormous stretch of ocean. A rock the size of a house, surrounded by 200,000 square miles of contested sea. Fact 40. The island that broke the world and doesn't know it. Britain is 94,000 square miles, roughly the size of Oregon. It has no rare earth minerals, no vast oil plains, no Amazon River, no Himalayas. And yet this island invented the steam engine, the television, the World Wide Web, the first programmable computer, penicillin, modern nursing, the postal stamp. It industrialized the planet, colonized a quarter of Earth's surface, created the global financial system, the English language, modern parliamentary democracy. One island, shaped by ice, carved by floods, tilting slowly into the sea, changed the trajectory of human civilization more than almost any place in history. Not because of its geography, despite it. Every island tells a story. But Britain's story is written in ice and flood and ancient stone, in a coastline that shifts its length depending on how closely you look, in mountains that remember being higher than Everest, in a country that is, right now, tipping southward at a rate too slow to feel and too permanent to stop. This island didn't just shape history. History shaped the island, and the reshaping isn't finished.